Now that almost a full week has passed since the NBA's trade deadline, enough time has gone by for the dust to settle on the entire situation to the point where we can actually assess who did well and who didn't. The teams that did really well have obviously been getting a lot of the attention from fans and media alike, but on the flip side, there are a few teams that are flying under the radar despite allowing the deadline to pass, with the state of their team looking more questionable than ever. This brings us to the topic of today's video, where we'll be discussing 4 NBA teams in particular that, to put it lightly, don't really seem to know what direction they even want to go in right now. Each team included in today's video has their own unique set of reasons for coming off as lacking in direction, but the one similarity between all of them was their either inactivity during the trade deadline or questionable moves during it, despite heavy incentive to get more involved. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching these videos aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I would also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first team we'll be discussing today that is showing signs of lacking in any real direction is the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls were one of the league's most aggressive teams 2 off-seasons ago when they brought in DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, and Alex Caruso after having traded for Nikola Vucevic the season prior. It really felt like they were ready to take a leap that could put them near the top of the standings, and last year they ended their playoff drought as a result of it, but that's the extent of the success that these moves have brought forth. They lost to the Bucks in 5 games in the first round of the playoffs last year, made a few small moves this offseason, such as bringing in Andre Drummond and Goran Dragic, and thought they would be able to run it back this year and find success, but those hopes have proven to be unrealistic. The Bulls are in 11th place in the East right now, despite technically being all in, and when your season is going this poorly, the expectation is that the front office will have some urgency to either get them back on track or to shift their focus to the future by trying to rebuild, but at this year's trade deadline, the Bulls did nothing, and when I say nothing, I mean absolutely nothing. There were plenty of rumors that the Bulls would be one of the most active teams trying to either find a piece that can bolster their rotation, or as sellers trying to maximize their players' value in a lost season, but they made 0 trades and are now stuck in the realm of mediocrity. Nikola Vucevic is a free agent this summer, DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine are not good enough as a duo to lead a team to anything significant, and they already have most of their cap space locked up next year, so signing free agents will be tough to pull off. It's hard to envision what the light at the end of the tunnel looks like for the Bulls, so it just seems like they're stuck in place. The next team we'll be discussing today that seems to be lacking in any real direction right now is the Miami Heat. Just last year, this team was the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, but ever since their Game 7 loss to the Celtics in the conference finals, they have arguably done nothing of significance regarding roster construction, trade making, or free agent signing. This offseason, I discussed in length about how I thought it was a mistake that they opted to essentially run it back with the same team minus PJ Tucker without bringing in any new faces to strengthen their front court, and now that we're almost 3/4 of the way through the season, those concerns have proven to be legitimate. The team's front court is basically a one-man show, as Bam Adebayo has to carry a brunt of the load in that regard, and the impact metrics for when Bam is on the court compared to when he's on the bench are staggering, as the team's production falls off a cliff without him. The Heat even released Dwayne Dedmon because of his inability to fill that hole, but instead of finding a replacement, they once again did absolutely nothing at the trade deadline, so for a full year, they've made 0 worthwhile moves. The Heat are in 6th place in the East standings, which isn't bad by any means, but this is a team that finished in 1st place a year ago with lofty expectations, so their inactivity just baffles me. It's almost as if they're content with letting this season waste away, which is why they seem to lack direction at the moment. The next team we'll be discussing that seems to be lacking in direction right now is the Portland Trailblazers. The Trailblazers in the Damian Lillard era have experienced a few successful runs, including 1 trip to the conference finals, but last season the front office essentially admitted that their ceiling was capped when they traded away CJ McCollum, and many thought it could be time to rebuild because of it. Every single year, without fail, Damian Lillard emphasizes that he's committed to the Portland Trailblazers and doesn't want to go anywhere else, and the front office, at least with their words, repeat the same notion, saying that they're committed to building a contender around Lillard. Yet when you look at their actions, they continue to take steps towards rebuilding without actually doing so. Sure, the team brought in players like Jeremy Grant and Gary Payton II in the offseason, but despite that, the team still found themselves outside of even the play-in tournament window in the standings right now, and are currently in just 11th place in the West. Unlike the last two teams we discussed in this video, the Blazers were active at the trade deadline, but the moves they made weren't necessarily the kind of moves you would expect from a team looking to make a push to the playoffs. Instead, after the trades they made, they ended up shipping out both Gary Payton and Josh Hart, and in their place, along with draft capital, they received players like Matisse Thybulle, Cam Reddish, and Kevin Knox. Thybulle is a player known for his stellar defense, but in the postseason, he has proven to be a liability for providing nothing offensively, and then Reddish and Knox are the kind of players that tanking teams should be taking a flyer on in order to give them more minutes to try to develop their potential, because right now, neither are objectively very good players. I cannot say with any confidence that I think the Blazers will even be in the playoffs this year, which is a complete failure for a franchise that claims to want to contend with Damian Lillard. And lastly, the fourth and final team we'll be discussing today that is struggling to find their true direction is the Toronto Raptors. Ever since the Raptors won the title in 2019, they have been in a steady decline every season, and this year it appears as though that decline will culminate in another missed playoff appearance. They're an interesting group because they have quite a few valuable trade pieces, along with a few all-star caliber guys as well, but together, it just hasn't been good enough to make any real noise. Similar to the Chicago Bulls, there were plenty of reports and rumors that came out saying that the Raptors were going to be one of the most active teams at the trade deadline, potentially cashing in on some of their biggest names in order to stock up on assets for the future, but that was not at all what went down. Reports have also been saying for about a year now that players like OG Anunoby have been upset in their current role, wanting to be more involved, and Anunoby was mostly expected to be traded by those around the situation, but the Raptors seem to have had way too high of an asking price for him, expecting 3 to 4 first-round picks for him, and when the trade deadline passed, the only deal they ended up actually making was a deal that acquired them Jakob Poeltl. The Raptors are in 9th place in the Eastern Conference standings right now, so playoff hopes are still alive, but even though Poeltl is one of the more underrated players in the league, he's not the kind of player that will come in and save their season either. Plus, he's a free agent at the end of this season, so if they end up missing the playoffs this year, then trading for him will end up being pointless. Both Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. are going to be free agents this year as well, so refusing to trade either of them and risking losing them for nothing could prove to be a costly mistake. OG Anunoby only has 1 year left on his current contract after this year as well, so his value will take a big hit next season if they end up re-engaging teams on trade talks, and Pascal Siakam only has 1 year left on his current contract as well, so the future is very much up in the air in Toronto, yet they felt content staying where they are at for some reason. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these teams and their plans for the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.